It was a quiet night in the small town of Oak Ridge. The wind blew gently through the trees, and the sound of distant crickets filled the air. In a little house on the edge of town, the Thompson family sat in their living room, enjoying their usual peaceful evening. The father, John, was reading a book, while his wife, Emily, was knitting. Their two children, Jake and Lily, were playing on the floor, laughing as they built a tower with blocks. Everything seemed normal, just like any other evening. But then, without warning, a loud, sharp sound broke the stillness. It was like a huge explosion mixed with a thunderclap. The walls of the house shook, and the windows rattled. John jumped up, his heart racing. What was that? He muttered, running to the window. Outside, the sky was glowing, lit by a strange, flickering light. The glow was unlike anything they had ever seen before, bright, blue, and unnatural. It wasn't the light of a lightning strike. It wasn't the glow of a plane or a meteor. It was something else, something strange. Mom, Dad, what's happening? Jake asked, his voice filled with worry. I don't know, Emily replied, looking just as confused. She held Lily close to her, her own eyes wide with concern. John ran to the door, throwing it open. The wind had picked up, howling around the house. As he stepped outside, the air felt colder, heavier, as if something was coming. His eyes scanned the sky, looking for any sign of what had caused that terrifying sound. Then he saw it. A streak of bright blue light streaked across the sky, moving fast like a shooting star. But this wasn't like any star he'd ever seen. The light was falling, heading straight toward their field. Come on, let's go, John said, grabbing Emily's arm. They rushed out of the house, leaving the children behind in the safety of the living room. John and Emily hurried toward the open field behind their house, the wind whipping around them. As they reached the edge of the field, they saw it, a large, glowing object, lying in the middle of the grass. It looked like a small spaceship, something that shouldn't exist. It was covered in a smooth, silver metal, with strange symbols glowing faintly on its surface. It didn't make any noise now, but the glowing marks on its side pulsed with an eerie rhythm. John's heart pounded in his chest. What had happened? Was this a spaceship? Had they just witnessed the crash of some kind of alien craft? Before he could say anything, Emily gasped, Look, there's someone inside. John's eyes snapped to the small, open hatch at the side of the craft. There, lying in the grass, was a small figure, curled up like a child. It was covered in a soft, glowing light, and at first, John thought it might be a reflection or a trick of the light. But as he stepped closer, he saw that it was real. It was a boy, no older than 10 years old. His skin was a strange shade of green, and his large, round eyes were wide open. Though he seemed unconscious, he was wearing a simple, white robe-like outfit, and his small body was shaking from the cold. Emily quickly knelt beside him. John, what should we do? He's hurt. He looks like he needs help. John knelt down beside her. His mind raced. Was this some kind of prank? But no, this was real. This boy was not from Earth. There was no denying it. His skin, his eyes, his entire appearance were completely alien. What do we do now? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We have to help him, Emily replied, her voice shaking. We can't leave him out here alone. John nodded. But we don't know who or what he is. We can't just bring him inside. Emily's gaze softened as she looked at the small, fragile figure lying before them. John, he's just a child. He's alone, and he's scared. We have to help him. We can't turn our backs on him. John hesitated. The decision was too big, too dangerous. But in that moment, something deep inside him told him they had no choice. If they left him out here, who knew what could happen? Who knew if anyone else would come for him, someone dangerous, someone who wanted to harm him? They had to act fast. All right, John said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Let's take him inside. We'll figure out what to do from there. Together, they gently lifted the boy, careful not to hurt him. His body was light, almost too light for his size. They carried him back to the house, and as they did, the strange glow from the ship seemed to fade, leaving only the darkness of the night behind them when they entered the house. Emily rushed to the living room and set the boy on the couch. She quickly covered him with a blanket to keep him warm. We need to call someone. We can't handle this on our own." John stared down at the boy, unsure of what to do next. But then, something strange happened. The boy's eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at them, confused but awake. His breathing was slow, and he blinked several times as if trying to understand his surroundings. "Where am I?" the boy whispered in a soft, trembling voice. John and Emily exchanged a glance. They had no idea who this boy was, where he had come from, or why he had fallen from the sky. But one thing was certain: his arrival would change everything. The boy didn't speak again for hours. He just lay on the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling, his large eyes unblinking, as if lost in his own world. The Thompson family, meanwhile, sat quietly around him, unsure of what to do next. The night had passed uneventfully, with only the occasional sound of wind outside breaking the silence. John and Emily couldn't stop glancing at the boy. They both had so many questions. Where had he come from? What did he want? And most of all, why was he so afraid? They had tried to talk to him, tried to offer him food, but he refused to eat. He didn't react to the water they placed beside him either. His eyes seemed to be focused on something beyond the walls of the house, as though he could see something. They see OULD in single quotes T. Emily, ever the compassionate one, was the first to approach him again. She knelt down beside the couch, trying to catch his attention. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice gentle. "We're here to help. Do you need anything? Can we get you something to eat?" The boy didn't respond, his gaze fixed in front of him. Emily's heart ached as she watched him, his small body trembling slightly despite the blanket she had covered him with. His skin was cold to the touch, almost unnaturally cold. She noticed his hands were delicate, with thin, almost translucent skin. He was different, but Emily wasn't scared of him. She couldn't be. He was just a child, scared and lost. She reached out to him, brushing his hair back from his forehead. As she did, she felt a sudden shock, a jolt of coldness that made her pull her hand back quickly. The boy's eyes flickered for a moment, but he didn't move. "Maybe we should call someone," John suggested from the other side of the room, watching the interaction with concern. "I don't know what we're dealing with here. This isn't something the local hospital can help with." Emily shook her head. "We can't. If we call someone, they'll take him away. They'll never let us help him. We can't do that." John sighed, rubbing his forehead. "But what if he's dangerous? What if he's not just a boy? What if he's from somewhere else?" His voice trailed off, but the fear was clear in his eyes. Before Emily could respond, the boy's eyes suddenly locked onto hers. For a moment, she felt as if his gaze went right through her. There was something in his eyes, something ancient, something knowing. It made her feel as though she was no longer in control of the situation. The room seemed to grow colder, and the air became heavy with an unspoken tension. The boy's voice broke the silence, his words quiet but sharp. "Hungry." Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was the first thing he had said in hours, and despite how faint his voice was, it was clear he needed something. "We've got food," she said quickly, standing up. "I'll get you something to eat, all right?" She moved toward the kitchen, but as she did, the boy's eyes followed her every movement. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her more closely than he should be, as though every action she took was being analyzed, calculated. John stood up as well, walking over to the couch where the boy lay. "We don't know where you came from," he said, his voice low and calm, "but you're safe here for now. We'll figure this out. Just stay with us." The boy's eyes darted to him for a moment before he looked away again. He didn't speak. It was as if his thoughts were somewhere far away, and no matter how hard they tried to reach him, they couldn't get through. Emily returned with a bowl of warm soup and a piece of bread. She set it down gently in front of the boy. "Here, I made this. Please, just try to eat." The boy didn't move at first. He just stared at the food, his eyes narrowing. It was clear he was hesitant, unsure if he could trust them. But then, with a quiet whimper, he slowly reached out with one trembling hand and took the bowl. His fingers brushed the surface of the soup, and Emily held her breath. Would he eat? Would he even be able to? To her surprise, he brought the bowl to his lips, sipping the soup slowly. As he did, his body seemed to relax, the tension in his small frame easing just a little. He drank quietly, his eyes half closed as if savoring every drop. For a few moments, Emily and John just watched, holding their breaths, unsure if they were witnessing something extraordinary or just a simple act of survival. When the boy finished the soup, he set the bowl down beside him. He looked at Emily again, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite understand. Gratitude, relief, or something darker? It was hard to tell. John took a step forward, trying to break the heavy silence. "We need to know who you are, where you came from. Can you tell us?" The boy's gaze flicked to him, but he didn't answer. Instead, he placed a small hand over his chest and closed his eyes, as though trying to block out the world around him. Emily could feel the weight of the silence. It was as if he was hiding something important. She didn't know if he was running from something, or if he had lost his memory, or if he was just scared. But one thing was certain. This boy wasn't just a child. He was part of something bigger, something they didn't understand. As the minutes ticked by, the family could sense that the boy was more than what he appeared. He wasn't just an innocent alien child who had fallen from the sky. There was something mysterious about him, something powerful, and whatever it was only a matter of time before they found out the truth. The house grew quieter again as they waited. The boy, now resting more comfortably, seemed to fall asleep, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the real story was just starting, and the mystery surrounding the boy would soon unfold in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. Emily woke to the sound of faint rustling coming from the living room. Her heart skipped a beat. Was the boy awake? She sat up quickly, glancing over at John, who was still fast asleep beside her. She stood quietly, careful not to wake him, and moved toward the source of the noise. The boy was sitting on the couch, his back against the cushions, his eyes wide open. His hands were clenched in his lap, and his body was tense. He was staring at something, but not at anything in the room. His gaze seemed fixed on a point far beyond the walls of the house, as if something or someone was pulling his attention away. Emily's breath caught in her throat. There was something about the way he was sitting so still, so focused, that made her uneasy. She'd never seen a child behave like this, let alone one from another world. What was he seeing? What was he thinking? She took a cautious step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, are you okay?" The boy's head snapped toward her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her flinch. His gaze felt colder than anything she had ever felt. There was a strange darkness in those eyes, a kind of knowledge that shouldn't be possible for someone so young. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a voice so soft she almost didn't hear it, he said, "They're coming." Emily's heart raced. "Who's coming? Who's after you?" The boy's lips trembled, and he glanced around the room nervously, as if the walls might close in on him. "They know I'm here. They'll find me." The room seemed to grow colder, the air thickening with tension. Emily stood frozen, unsure of what to say next. Who was he talking about? Who was after him? Her mind raced with questions, but she didn't dare ask too many at once. She had to be careful with him. He wasn't like any child she had ever known. His fear was palpable, but it was something deeper than just hunger or loneliness. Before she could speak again, the boy's eyes flashed with a sudden panic. "You have to leave," he whispered urgently. "They can't find me here, please. You have to hide." Emily felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Something about the way he said it, so desperate, so certain, told her that whatever was coming, it wasn't something they could escape easily. She needed to keep him calm, keep him safe. But how could she protect him from something she didn't even understand? "Listen to me," Emily said, her voice steady, trying to reassure him. "You're safe here. We won't let anyone hurt you. Just tell us what's going on. We need to know what's happening." The boy shook his head vigorously, his eyes wide with fear. "No," he said, his voice trembling. "You don't understand. They're not like you. They don't care if you're human or not. They'll destroy everything. They'll take me, and they'll take you too." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, each one more terrifying than the last. Emily couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread settle in her chest. Who could be coming for him? What kind of people, if they could even be called that, would do something like this? And why? Suddenly, the boy stood up, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. "You have to hide now," he repeated, his voice urgent. "They're already here." Emily's pulse quickened. She looked toward the window but saw nothing. The world outside appeared normal, peaceful. The sun was rising, birds were singing, and everything seemed untouched by the terror that the boy seemed to sense. But he wasn't wrong. There was something in the way he was acting that made her believe every word he was saying. "John," Emily called out, turning to hurry back to the bedroom. "John, wake up. We need to move now." John jolted awake at the sound of her voice, his eyes snapping open. "What is it? What's happening?" Emily's heart was racing, but she couldn't waste any more time. "The boy says someone's coming for him. He says they'll destroy everything if they find us. We have to go now." John quickly pulled himself out of bed, grabbing his jacket and shoes. He didn't need to ask more questions. He could see the panic in Emily's face, hear the urgency in her voice. They had to leave. They had to protect their family and the boy. Emily ran back to the living room. But the boy wasn't there anymore. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned in a panic, scanning the room. Had he left? Was he hiding somewhere? She called his name, but there was no response. Then she heard it, a soft, faint hum that seemed to come from nowhere. The walls trembled slightly, and a strange vibration filled the air. Emily's blood ran cold. It was the same sound she had heard the night the boy had arrived, the noise that had come with the flash of light from the sky. John appeared behind her, his face pale. "What's happening? What is that sound?" The boy's voice echoed in her mind. "They're coming." But from where? Was it the same creatures or people the boy had warned them about? Suddenly, the hum grew louder, and the windows rattled. Emily's eyes shot to the door. She could feel it now, the presence of something unnatural, something close, something dangerous. Before they could react, the front door creaked open slowly, as though pushed by an invisible force. The boy's warning echoed in Emily's mind again, louder this time. "They've found us." John and Emily exchanged a quick look, their faces filled with shock and fear. The room seemed to close in on them, the air thick and suffocating. The time for questions was over. They had no choice now. They had to run. The boy's words rang in Emily's ears as she grabbed John's hand and ran toward the back door. "Hide. Don't let them find you." They had no idea who or what was coming for them. But the fear in the boy's eyes, the terror in his voice, told them one thing: they were in grave danger, and they had to escape. The door creaked open, and the chill of the outside air swept into the house like a gust of wind, carrying with it a sense of impending doom. John grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her back away from the entrance, and their eyes darted toward the open doorway. The boy, who had been so quiet just moments before, was now standing in the middle of the living room, his body stiff and trembling, his eyes wide with pure terror. "No," the boy whispered urgently. "They're here. They've found me." John's pulse quickened as he looked at Emily, his mind racing. There was no sign of anyone outside, no sounds, no movement, yet the boy's panic was undeniable. It was as if the air itself was charged with a silent presence, something unseen but felt deeply in every corner of the house. Emily moved toward the boy slowly, but her heart was racing, a gnawing fear starting to eat away at her resolve. "We need to leave," John said, his voice low but urgent. "If they're really here, we don't have time to waste." Emily nodded, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the boy. She had no idea who or what was after him, but it was clear that whatever it wasn't human. The boy's warning hadn't been a bluff. They were in danger. The boy's gaze flickered toward the window, and in that moment, Emily saw something she hadn't noticed before. His eyes were no longer just filled with fear. There was something else there, something sharp and focused. The terror was still there, but now there was a deep, burning determination. He wasn't just a frightened child. There was a power in him, something otherworldly. "I have to protect you," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow it carried a weight, a command. "I can stop them, but only if you trust me." Before either of them could respond, the strange humming sound grew louder, vibrating through the walls. It was unmistakable now, a sound like some sort of machine, the hum of an engine from something not of this world. The noise was growing, getting closer, and the air seemed to grow colder, thicker, as if the very atmosphere was pushing them into a corner. John reached for Emily's hand again, gripping it tightly. His mind was racing, but he could only think of one thing. They had to get out. Whatever this was, whatever the boy had dragged them into, they couldn't face it unprepared. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. "What are you?" Emily asked, her voice trembling but firm as she looked down at the boy. "What's going on?" The boy didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked toward the door again, as if sensing something approaching. Then, in a voice that sounded almost like a plea, he said, "They're coming for me. They'll destroy everything in their path to get to me." John's breath caught in his throat. There it was again, the terror. But this time, the boy's voice had a weight to it. This wasn't just about survival anymore. The stakes were higher than any of them could understand. Before either of them could say anything more, the boy's body suddenly stiffened, his hands gripping the sides of the couch as though bracing for something. The lights flickered once, then twice, as if the power itself was struggling to keep up with whatever force was drawing near. In an instant, the boy moved faster than either John or Emily could react. He ran to the door, slamming it shut with surprising strength. "They're here," he whispered urgently. "You need to hide, hide." John repeated, his mind reeling. "What do you mean? Who are they?" "They can't know you're here," the boy said, his voice strained, his eyes wide with terror. "I'll protect you, but you must hide. Do not move. Do not make a sound." Emily's stomach twisted in knots. She could see the fear in his eyes, but there was something more, something in his stance, his voice. It was as if he knew what was coming, as if he had faced this before. And the more he spoke, the more she realized that this was no ordinary child. The boy was a survivor, and whatever he had run from was not something they could escape from easily. The sound outside grew louder, sharper. It was like the crackle of static electricity filling the air, a deep, pulsing hum that seemed to echo through their bones. Emily felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. The boy was right. Something was coming, and whatever it was not something they could fight with mere words. John's mind raced. He wanted to run, to grab Emily and the boy and escape to safety. But the look on the boy's face told him there was nowhere to hide. He had no idea what they were up against, but the boy seemed to be the key to everything. If they didn't listen to him, if they didn't do what he said, they might never get another chance. "John," Emily whispered, her voice trembling, "we have to do what he says. We don't know what we're dealing with." John swallowed hard. He didn't like it, but there was no time for hesitation. "All right," he said, his voice tight with fear. "We'll hide." The boy nodded, his gaze flicking quickly to the window, his face tense. "Hurry," he urged. "I'll make them think you're not here." With no time to question, Emily grabbed John's hand, and they moved quickly into the back room of the house, the boy following closely behind. He closed the door gently, but the tension in the air was nearly unbearable. They crouched in the corner, holding their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. Then the silence came. The humming had stopped, but it was replaced by something worse, an eerie stillness. It felt like the world had paused, holding its breath. It was then that Emily noticed something strange. The boy's eyes were glowing faintly, the same greenish hue they had seen the night he arrived. There was something in his eyes that made her wonder if he was no longer entirely human. Outside, the sound of footsteps began, slow, heavy, unforgiving. Something was out there, hunting them, and the boy was their only hope. The door rattled again, and Emily clutched John's hand tightly. The air was thick with fear, and the only thing that was certain was that they weren't going to be able to hide for much longer. The air was suffocatingly still. Emily could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, as if the very walls of the room were closing in on her. The boy's eyes were glowing faintly, a sickly green light that seemed to pulse with his every breath. She couldn't take her eyes off him. There was something different about him now, something powerful, something alien. John was crouched beside her, his fingers digging into her arm. He, too, had noticed the strange glow. The tension was unbearable, and with every passing second, the boy seemed to become more alive, as if he were drawing power from some unseen source. Emily's breath hitched when she noticed his hand twitch slightly, as if he were controlling something beyond their understanding. Then the footsteps outside grew louder, heavy, deliberate, and coming closer. A sickening knot twisted in Emily's stomach. She wanted to scream, to run, but the boy's words echoed in her mind. Hide, don't move, don't make a sound. They had no choice but to trust him, even though she wasn't entirely sure who or what they were hiding from. The boy had said they couldn't fight back, that they wouldn't survive if they didn't listen. But the idea of being hunted by something out there, something unknown, made her blood run cold. The room grew darker, despite the soft light coming through the window. The shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching unnaturally as the pressure outside increased. Emily glanced at John. His face was pale, his eyes wide, and his breath shallow. He was terrified, but there was nothing they could do. The boy's glow intensified for a moment, then flickered out. He turned to Emily and John, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak. Instead, he raised a hand and gestured for them to remain silent. The faint hum of something unseen seemed to fill the room, vibrating through the floorboards. It wasn't a sound they could hear directly, but it was in the air. Every particle around them seemed charged, alive, outside. The footsteps halted. Emily held her breath. Her pulse was erratic, her body frozen in place as if the very thought of moving might make them visible. Through the wall, she could feel the presence of something moving, something powerful, something that knew they were there. A shiver ran down her spine. The boy's eyes flickered with recognition. He looked toward the door, his face paling as if he were bracing for something. Emily watched as his form seemed to ripple. Not in any visible way, but in the way the room felt. It was as if the boy had become part of the very air, something intangible yet solid. Emily couldn't make sense of it, but she knew one thing: whatever was coming was far worse than anything they had imagined. The door rattled again. The boy's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the heavy silence like a knife. "Don't make a sound." Emily nodded, her chest tightening. She glanced at John. His jaw was clenched, and he gave her a look, a silent promise that they would make it out of this, that they would protect each other. But even in that shared look, Emily could see the cracks in his resolve, the fear that he couldn't hide. They weren't prepared for what was outside, for whatever this force was that hunted them so ruthlessly. And then, the door creaked open, but no one entered. Instead, a low growl echoed through the walls so deep it vibrated in their bones. Emily's eyes widened in horror. The sound wasn't just animal, it was mechanical, like some sort of hybrid creature or machine. It was like the growl of a predator that had evolved beyond any earthly creature. And it was close. The boy tensed, his face going pale. He shifted his weight, stepping into a protective stance, as though preparing for an attack. Emily's heart raced as she watched him. He was scared. The power that had been so present just moments before now seemed like a fragile thread, barely holding on. Whatever was out there was more than just a threat to him, it was a threat to everyone. The door slammed shut again, this time with a force that rattled the entire house. Emily jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. The hum outside stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. She glanced at John, her voice barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" Before John could respond, the boy's eyes darted to the window, his expression filled with fear and recognition. "They know," he said, his voice strained. "They're here." Suddenly, without warning, the window shattered with a loud crash. Glass flew in all directions as a dark shape lunged through, its figure monstrous and distorted. A twisted shadow, a silhouette that looked both human and something much darker, loomed in the doorway. The boy's eyes flared with light again, brighter, more intense than before. He raised his hand, and in that instant, the room seemed to distort. The walls trembled as if the house itself were alive, shaking under the weight of something ancient, something unimaginable. The air crackled with energy, and Emily felt her skin prickle, as though static electricity was building in the room. The creature at the window paused, its movements slow and deliberate. It tilted its head, as though sensing the boy's power. For a moment, everything was still. Then the creature stepped forward, its shape shifting and writhing like liquid. It was tall, with a long, sharp face that seemed to flicker between different forms, sometimes humanoid, sometimes something entirely alien. The glow from its eyes pierced the darkness like twin lasers, and Emily felt the weight of its gaze settle over her like an oppressive force you cannot hide. The creature's voice echoed, not through words, but through feeling, a low hum that resonated deep in her chest, in her very bones. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You cannot escape." The boy's eyes burned with fury, his power surging through the room. His voice came next, not pleading, but commanding. "I will stop you." Suddenly, the creature lunged forward, and the boy's power erupted in a blinding flash. The room became a battlefield, the walls bending, the air vibrating with energy. The lights flickered violently as if the house itself was struggling to withstand the force. Being unleashed inside it, Emily stumbled back, grabbing John's arm. Her mind was racing what was happening. She had no idea who or what this creature was, but it was clear now that the boy wasn't just trying to survive. He was fighting for something bigger than them, something that could either save them or destroy everything in its path. The room was filled with a low, crackling hum as the battle between the boy and the creature raged on. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps as she watched in horror. The walls trembled with every blast of energy, and the air was thick with a strange, metallic scent. The boy stood in the center of the chaos, his eyes glowing brighter than ever, while the creature, if it could even be called that, moved with an eerie fluidity, shifting and warping as it tried to close in on him. For a moment, everything seemed to move in slow motion. The boy raised his hand again, and a burst of bright light erupted from his palm, crashing into the creature's form with a violent force. The sound was deafening, a booming crack that sent shockwaves through the house. But the creature was unfazed, its twisted body reforming as if it were made of liquid, slithering toward the boy with relentless intent. Emily and John stood frozen in the corner, their eyes wide with fear, unable to look away from the unfolding spectacle. The boy was fighting something far beyond their understanding, something that seemed to bend the very laws of nature. They had no idea how long they could keep hiding, how much longer they could stay out of the fight. And yet, the boy's power, his resolve, was terrifying in its intensity. It was as though he had become something more than human, something ancient, something other. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," the creature hissed, its voice like the grinding of metal, sending chills down Emily's spine. The boy's eyes flickered toward it, filled with a cold, silent fury. "I will find you," the creature growled. "No matter where you hide, no matter how far you run." The boy's voice rang out next, low and steady. "You will not touch them." The words were simple, but there was a power in them, an unspoken promise that made Emily's skin prickle. She had no idea who or what the boy was, but in that moment, she understood that he wasn't just protecting them, he was protecting himself, too. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a battle for survival, for the boy's very existence. The creature hissed again, a sharp, agonized sound that filled the room with a terrible, unnatural energy. The boy's power surged once more, and the air itself seemed to bend, warping with the intensity of his will. The lights in the house flickered, casting long, erratic shadows across the walls. It was as though the very fabric of reality was bending, just for a moment, under the strain of the boy's abilities. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the boy's energy snapped, the light dimmed, and the creature froze. "Enough," the boy whispered. The creature trembled, its body rippling violently as though the boy's words had struck it like a physical blow. It paused, its eyes narrowing, as if calculating its next move. Emily could feel the air around them grow thick with tension, the sense that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. "You can't stop me," the creature spat. "You're nothing but a child. You don't know the power you're playing with. You have no idea what you've unleashed." The boy didn't flinch. He simply stood there, calm and focused, his eyes locked on the creature with an intensity that seemed to burn through the air. He had no fear in his gaze, no hesitation. It was as though he knew exactly what he was up against, knew exactly what had to be done. "I know what I'm doing," the boy said quietly, his voice steady. "And you're not welcome here." With a sudden, swift motion, the boy lifted his hand one last time. The energy that shot out of him was unlike anything Emily had ever seen. It was blinding, a wave of pure light that tore through the air with a force that was both beautiful and terrifying. The creature screamed no, howled in agony as the light engulfed it, its form writhing and flickering like smoke. The room shook, and the very ground beneath them seemed to tremble, as if the house itself were fighting to stay intact. Emily stumbled back, gripping John's arm tightly as the power swirled around them, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. The light grew so bright, so intense, that Emily had to squeeze her eyes shut, afraid of being consumed by it. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the light faded, and the air went still. Emily opened her eyes slowly, her heart still racing in her chest. The room was dark again, the only light coming from the faint glow of the boy's eyes. The creature, whatever it had been, was gone. There was nothing left but a faint, lingering scent in the air, something like burnt metal and ozone. Emily could hardly believe it. The boy had done it. He had stopped whatever that thing was. But at what cost? The boy stood there, his shoulders slumped, his breathing heavy. His glow was dimming, fading back into his skin. He looked small again, fragile in the dim light, and for the first time since they had met him, Emily saw something in his eyes that wasn't just power. It was exhaustion. The boy's body shook slightly, and his legs wobbled. He collapsed to his knees, and Emily rushed to his side without thinking, her heart aching for him. "Hey, are you all right? What's happening to you?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flickered up to meet hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something in them that made her heart break. It was as though he was seeing the world through new eyes, through eyes that had been hiding a terrible truth. "I'm not human," the boy said softly, his voice strained. "I'm not like you." Emily opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. She didn't know what to say. The truth of it settled in her chest, heavy and cold. The boy wasn't just an alien. He was something far more complicated, something far more powerful. And whatever this battle had been, whatever had just happened, it was only the beginning. "We're in this together," Emily whispered, her voice soft but firm. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." The boy's lips trembled slightly, and for a moment, Emily thought he might smile. But then his eyes flickered, his energy waning further. Whatever he had done, whatever power he had tapped into, it was taking its toll on him. As the house settled into an uneasy silence, Emily knew that this wasn't over. The boy had defeated one enemy, but there were more to come. More forces, more battles, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The house was eerily quiet now, save for the occasional creak of the wooden floors and the distant hum of the world outside. The chaos that had just unfolded felt like a distant nightmare, one Emily couldn't fully comprehend. She sat by the boy's side, her hand resting gently on his shoulder as he recovered from the ordeal. He was still breathing heavily, his body exhausted from the power he had unleashed. The faint glow in his eyes had dimmed to almost nothing, leaving only the boy they had met that fateful night. But even in his weakened state, there was something undeniably powerful about him, a force that had saved them. John stood by the window, his eyes scanning the outside world, still cautious, still unsure of what lay ahead. The tension in the room was palpable, every second stretching longer than the last. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the battle had only just begun. "We can't stay here much longer," John said, his voice tight with worry. "Whatever that thing was, it'll be back, and we don't know how many more of them there are." Emily nodded, her gaze never leaving the boy. He was still too weak to speak, but the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He was afraid, afraid of what was coming, afraid of what he had done, and maybe, just maybe, afraid of what he had become. But she wouldn't leave him, no matter what. "Do you think we can trust him?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't looking at Emily. His eyes were fixed on the boy, who had collapsed onto the couch. "I mean, what are we even dealing with? He's not like anything we've ever seen." Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing as she considered his words. They had no answers, no explanations. The boy had come from somewhere unknown, had been hunted by something far beyond their understanding, and had unleashed a power none of them had ever witnessed. But there was something in his eyes, the same look she had seen when he had saved them. Determination, a desire to protect. "I think we have no choice but to trust him," Emily replied, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "He's trying to protect us, and himself. Whatever happened out there, whatever he's running from, it's not over. Not yet." John ran a hand through his hair, his face a mixture of fear and frustration. "But we don't even know who or what is chasing him. How can we fight something we don't even understand?" "We can't fight it alone," Emily said quietly. "But together, we can survive. He's not just some alien child, John. He's a survivor. We saw it in his eyes, the way he fought back. He has the power to protect us." John didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned back toward the window, his brow furrowing as he scanned the horizon. He could feel it to the sense of danger that lingered, waiting in the shadows. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized Emily was right. The boy had risked everything to save them. They couldn't abandon him now. They had to stick together, no matter how dangerous it became. But there was still the problem of what came next. They couldn't stay in the house forever. The creature they had just faced wasn't alone, and there would be others. They couldn't hide forever. Emily stood up, her mind made up. "We need to move. We need to find a place where we can regroup, where we can figure out what to do next." John turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers. "Where do we go? How do we even know where we're safe?" The boy stirred on the couch, his eyes flickering open. He blinked slowly, his expression tired but determined. "You don't," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "They will find you. They will find me." Emily knelt down beside him, her heart aching at the exhaustion in his eyes. "We have to try," she said softly, taking his hand in hers. "We have to keep moving, keep running. We can't stop now." The boy looked up at her, his gaze filled with a mix of fear and something else, something she couldn't quite place. It was as if he had seen the end of everything and yet refused to accept it, as if he was willing to fight for them, even when it seemed like there was no hope left. "I've run my entire life," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They always find me. They always find me." His voice cracked as if the weight of his words was too much for him to bear. "I don't know how much longer I can keep them away." Emily squeezed his hand, her determination solidifying. "We won't let them take you. We won't let them take any of us." The boy's eyes searched her face, as if trying to read her, to understand her words. And for the first time, Emily saw a flicker of something in his eyes, hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there, a tiny spark that she couldn't ignore. "We can't run forever," the boy said, his voice quieter now. "But we can fight. If you want to survive, you have to understand who they are, what they're after." John stepped forward, his expression tense. "Who are they? What do they want?" The boy looked at him, his gaze cold, distant. "They are hunters," he said slowly, each word weighed down with meaning. "They seek power. They come for me because I am the last of my kind. They want to erase everything I know, everything I am. They want to use me." Emily's stomach dropped. She felt her body stiffen with fear and anger. "Use you for what?" The boy's eyes darkened, his face hardening with a resolve that Emily could almost feel. "To destroy your world, to make it theirs." The weight of his words settled over them like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating. Emily felt a cold sweat bead on the back of her neck. They were fighting for more than just survival now. This wasn't just about a boy who had fallen from the sky. This was about the fate of everything they knew. John's voice was quiet, a low murmur as he spoke to no one in particular. "So, we fight." The boy nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Emily's. "We fight." And just like that, Emily realized that this was no longer just about protecting themselves. This was about something much bigger. They were fighting not just for their lives, but for the future of everything. Whatever was coming for the boy, whatever force he had been running from all this time, it was coming for them all now. They didn't have much time. But Emily knew deep in her heart that they would face it together, no matter what.